Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a suspension upgrade on my 2016 Indian Scout 60. I got me some progressive fork springs that I'll be installing on my Scout today. These fork springs are for the 2015 to 2016 model Indian Scout 60. Supposedly their suspension is known for not being the greatest, and from what I've researched, new fork springs, and a change of the upgrade in the fork oil supposed to make significant changes to this bike. So stick around. I hope you enjoy this install video, and to quickly let you know that this video is not sponsored. Let's run that intro. Hey everyone, I'm going to include some post-narration in this install video. First, let me start off by saying in no way am I a professional. I put together this video as a guide to hopefully be helpful for any of you that attempt to upgrade your front suspension on your Indian Scout. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Alright, let's go ahead and break loose this axle pinch bolt located on the left side of the axle bolt. Afterwards, we're going to break loose the axle bolt itself with a 16mm hex key socket. Now let's remove our 4 bolts, 2 on each side, to remove the front fender. I also want to say I did make several mistakes in this video, which I'll point out throughout this narration. One recommendation I have is don't recommend using the T-handle hex keys, which I'm actually using right now. They're not really made for this breaking loose of these torque bolts, and you may end up twisting the hex key, or worse, messing up the bolt itself. Do yourself a favor and pick up a set of socket hex keys. They give better leverage in a job such as this. Something I learned later throughout this video. Okay, go ahead and remove the front caliper mounting bolts as shown. This job didn't require me to bleed the brakes, as long as you don't mess with the front brake lines. Now let's go ahead and move your caliper assembly out of the way, temporarily. I used a bungee cord to keep mine out of the way, and be sure it's secured in place. Okay, now back to the axle pinch bolt. Let's go ahead and remove it, and the axle bolt itself. Also, please be sure the bike is securely fastened to the jack when the axle bolt is removed. The front tire is going to fall, and your bike's weight distribution is going to be off, so not having that front wheel on to keep it balanced. So keep that in mind. Okay, now let's break loose the lower and upper fork mounting bolts and get one of those forks removed. Now before we do that, I'm going to use a flat screwdriver to spread the lower fork mount so the fork slides downward. Now bring it just to near the top of the lower fork mounts. We're going to temporarily tighten those bolts back up and now break loose the fork cap. I believe that's a 32mm socket. Remember, just break it loose, don't remove that cap. Okay, now that we got our front fork assembly removed, I'm going to remove the front fork cap. Now be careful, removing this as a portion of this cap is under spring tension, so keep that in mind. Now once that's removed, we're going to go ahead and remove our factory metal spacer along with the washer that is part of the factory and the factory spring itself. And then afterwards, let's go ahead and dump out that old fork oil. Alright, when I got these progressive springs, they give you these plastic spacers right here that you are supposed to trim down to the recommended height or whatever, and according to the instructions, most of the Indian Scouts, like I know for mine, the 2016, you're supposed to trim it down to 1.4 inches, which translates to about 35.5 millimeters. So I went ahead and measured out like 35.5 or 35, around 35 millimeters for both of these. So there's plenty of space here, so you know, if I mess this up, then I can always use this other side or the other side for that one. So hopefully I'll be able to get this right. So let's go ahead and cut these out real quick.
5 minutes later.
Okay, big mistake here, folks. There are better ways to cut and trim these plastic spacers. I guess I should have used my miter saw in this instance, but you live and you learn. Oh my god, I ruined that one. Fudge. Alright, yeah. So I got this one right, but this one, I supposedly sanded too much of it. So, yeah, it's a good thing you have extra here to use. So, lesson learned, just be careful when you're using a portable sander.
5 minutes later.
Alright. Oh, yeah. Perfect. Perfect. Not perfect. Not perfect. Alright. There we go. Let's clean up this mess and continue on to the next step. Okay, now the fun part. Okay, so I got my fork here, and I need to put some fork oil in it. I picked up this progressive suspension fork oil. It's the 20 weight, which is what the progressive instructions recommend, is using 20 weight oil for the 2015 to, I believe, the 2016, well, 2016 and maybe the 2017 Scout 60s like mine. So according to this, the spring needs to be all the way compressed down. It is now, and it has to be a maximum of 140 millimeters. So from the top, which would be like right there, basically. I don't have anything in there at the moment. I just wanted to see. Alright, so I reckon let's pour a little bit of oil in there and find out what happens. Yeah, this part gets a bit confusing. According to Progressive, they recommend a 140 millimeter air gap, and from Indian standpoint, it's 335 cubic centimeters of oil. I'm sure there's a better way of measuring this. I went with the old school reading the line on the ruler, at least I think I did. Okay, sorry I stopped recording for a little bit, but basically what I come to determination is like I said, is the maximum air gap that you want to have according to the instructions is 140 millimeters, but there's a range between 140 to 160. I'm adding a little bit more than 140, so I'm kind of going like with, you know, maybe an air gap of 143 to 145 or something like that. So one thing I did notice with this ruler I have is that when you go to measure it, the line where it starts at, there's like this little bit of a extra section right here of the ruler. So I determined that looks like an extra 3 millimeters that is kind of there, that's not necessary. So 140 minus 3 is 137. So for me, 137 was my max air gap. So let's measure. Like, I went ahead and did this earlier just to make sure. I already put the oil in there and double checked it a couple times, but no air gaps there. Fully compressed. Let's take this down here to, oops, sorry, wrong way. Let's take this down here to 137. So we got 130 right here at the top, 135, 36, 37, 137 right there. Okay, so it's not touching anything. So from the ruler's perspective, now I'm going to go to 140, which would technically be 143 according to this, taking in mind this little section here that you can't really account for. So 140 would technically be 143. So let's go down to 140, the top right there. All right, let's pull it out and see. Okay, so that's 140, which is 143. So I'm gonna go to 143, which would be 146. So let's go to 146, 142, 3, 4, 5. So around 140. We'll go to 145. So 145. All right. So now we're starting to get into some oil right there on it. So I believe that's around 145 air gap. So I'm going to leave it as it is. So now, yeah. So now let's, according to the instructions, we're going to put the spring in, the new one here. This is the cool side down. I'm going to put it in there just like I did with the other one. I think we can take this fully out. And we're going to drop the spring in like so. Alright. Okay. Then you got a washer you drop on top of the spring, and then your cutout spacer that we cut out earlier, that goes in there, and then another washer that's provided with the kit, and then your knurl of your top, your cap, basically. And I think this is one of the parts like where you gotta be careful and make sure you don't strip the threads and all that. So let's see if I can get this on here. All right. Once again, turn the camera off to save myself the cursing. Took old Mr. Persuasion, but I finally got it. So now I just need to kind of get this snug down here. Alright, I'm going to leave it at that for now. That was done. Now to reassemble it. And then on to the next one. Okay, now that we got that fork back in place, let's go ahead and torque it up on that fork cap. It's only 16 foot-pounds, so don't go overboard. Okay, this is a portion here I left out. First, I recommend when going to align both of these front forks, do yourself a favor and fit up just the axle bolt itself with the corresponding threads on the right. You want to make sure that this is all properly aligned. Torque up those upper and lower front fork mounting bolts to 18 foot-pounds and you're ready to reassemble your tire. And let's go ahead and put back together those front brake caliper bolts. Those are 32 foot-pounds of torque. Oh yeah, and also, put back those turn signals. I didn't include taking those off, did I? Sorry about that. Okay, and finally, let's go ahead and torque up that axle bolt. It's 52 foot-pounds, and that axle pinch bolt, I believe, is going to be 22 pounds. All right, I'm done. Now to lower this thing down and get it out and see how it rides. Alright everybody, let's do a true test of this new front suspension. I'm gonna ride across these 6 or 7 railroad tracks and see how this thing does. I knew before it was like, it's like not that bad. A lot better than it was before. A lot more stable. Alright, I will say that I have I've been riding this thing for the past couple days. I haven't got a chance to give an update on how it rides, but for me, I feel like it does. The front end seems a lot more planted, a lot more stable than it was before. I'm sure that the combination of the new springs and the updated fork oil, going to 20 weight fork oil as recommended, has definitely made some improvements and all.
I will say the experience that I had with the factory suspension on my Scout is that I would go out and I'd be like on a ride for a couple hours, and I would start to notice that the bike would get kind of like, it would get kind of, I don't know, almost felt like it felt kind of loose in the front end. Not necessarily I would say like loose, but just like just really soft. Regarding the stabilization, real soft in the front and all. And I was reading that on these particular Scouts, the 2015 2016 Scouts, that they used a pretty thin fork oil. The fork springs were pretty mediocre, and doing this upgrade to these progressive springs, these stiffer progressive springs, and this stiffer fork oil definitely has helped significantly. So yeah, that was one upgrade that I wanted to do this past winter, so I was glad I was able to knock that out. I do want to do the rear shocks eventually and replace those. For me, I'm not a very heavy guy, so these factory ones, like, they do all right. I will say that they did okay for me when I went down to VAM, and I had the saddlebags loaded up. I plan to pack a little more conservative this time for trips I do this year, so not have as much weight, and so they handle me pretty well. I would say the advantage that the rear shocks, aftermarket rear shocks, would be the ease of adjustment that those have over using these factory ones that pretty much have very little compromise in their stiffness. So, but I hope that you enjoy this installation video. I hope it was helpful in some way or another. Like I said, I'm not a professional, and thank y'all for watching. Appreciate it. Hope y'all have a fantastic day, and I'll see you next time.